Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, addicts of all ages, welcome to Canadian Sober, eh? I'm your host and resident alcoholic, Dougie Fresh. Welcome to the show. When you say the word addict in your own head, what do you think of? You probably think of an alcoholic, drug addict, but that word addict branches out to so many different things. And today on the show, I have somebody that I've been expecting and waiting on for a while. I've been wanting to interview this lady for a long time, and her name is Vera. And Vera is a food addict, and she's going to touch a little bit on that story. How you doing today, Vera?
I'm great. Thank you so much for asking me to come by and speak about this topic that I love talking about.
Oh, I'm so excited that you're here. Like I said, like that word addict branches out. And a lot of people, when you say addict, they don't really necessarily, pair that with food addiction. At least, I never hear that anyways. So could you, for the people that have no idea who Vera is, could you share with them a little bit of your story today with us?
Okay, thank you so much. I'm happy to do so. So my name is Vera. I'm actually a doctor that works in addictions, but I'm going to give you a little bit of my personal story and then a little bit of the professional as well. So yes, addiction. I did definitely come from a family with addiction. My mother was an addict. My father drank too much. And I also, when I was in my younger years, also drank too much in a way that was problematic. And I think it was in university when I thought, I can't drink this way. I just have to stop drinking because I want to go to university and I want to excel. I was ambitious and I just knew that alcohol was going to get in the way. So I did that. I quit drinking. And it was a hard stop. I knew I couldn't control it. So I just stopped. And what I found that ended up happening is that I started to eat more than I had before. Now that I work in the field and I talk to lots of people with food addiction, a lot of people will say, I had troubles even before, like when I was a child. But I would say that my own story was that I definitely liked sweets. I liked Halloween. I liked Christmas. I liked the holidays because it was always full of sweets. But I wasn't somebody like many people that ate, crawled up the table and stole the family cookies, when they were younger. That wasn't really my story. I don't know if it was because in my day, because I'm older, it just wasn't as available as it is today. Maybe I would be like that today. But anyway, that wasn't my story. So it started with alcohol. And then in university, when I stopped drinking, I started to eat. And initially I thought, well, that's okay. But then I started to gain weight and I didn't like that. So I tried to control the weight gain. And what ended up happening was, and this was in the 70s, 80s, I started to eat it was actually quite a shock to me, but my obsession to want to eat, especially as I tried to control it, became really dominant. It was like, it seemed like week by week, the obsession to either want to lose weight or eat or count the calories or count how much I had to run or jog to burn off the calories became more important than my papers that I had to write, than people that I was talking to. I might be going out for a coffee with somebody and I would be thinking as we're eating, of course we're eating cake or some kind of dessert. I'd be thinking, they haven't finished their dessert. Can I have some of theirs? How can I ask in a polite way? Or I'm thinking, can I have another one? Like I'm thinking about that more than I'm thinking about the person. And when I realized that was becoming like weird, like why is this becoming so difficult? I tried to get help, and those were the days when nobody was talking about food addiction. Even today, it's a struggle. People don't talk about it. But then what they were talking about was eating disorders, and even then, not that much. So I thought, okay, I have an eating disorder, and I actually developed then what would then have been called bulimia because I would eat a lot. I mean, how long does it take to get full when you want to eat and all you're thinking about? A half an hour at tops, but I still got the rest of the night to live with myself and this crazy desire to keep eating. So I would end up throwing it up so I could eat more and then throw it up and eat more, essentially developing this binge purge cycle that we would call bulimia today. But it never really fit that term because it was always like an obsession. And then it became an obsession to control it or lose the weight. It was just an obsession and it took over. And I got to say, it kind of took over for many, many years. And it wasn't until I got into the addiction field, which was like 20 years, like when I was in my 40s, that I started to think, that word addiction fits better than bulimia or an eating disorder. And I had, through those 20 years, tried so many different things that many of you who listening who are struggling with your weight will recognize. I would do I'll just eat like crazy on Saturday. I'll have a cheat day, and then the rest of the time I will be super strict. And that only lasted for a while, because then Saturday became Sunday, and then it became Monday, and then it was back again. Or I would try to just eat low carb. No, not low carb. Low fat stuff. But so it was okay to eat anything as long as it wasn't high in fat. That didn't work either. I mean, I tried so many different things. I tried pills to stop. I tried drinking again instead. I tried to over-exercise. I tried many things. Nothing really, really worked. It was kind of like moving from one thing to another. So maybe I would smoke a bit of pot, but again, that got in the way of my work. Drinking got in the way of my work. Anyway, it was perpetually a struggle. And then finally, as I was working in, I was working in family medicine, and I felt really bad about myself, telling people, you got to lose weight, you got to eat well, while I'm not doing it myself. Like I felt very hypocritical about my own behavior, telling somebody else. And so I like I said, I just kept struggling. Today, if I were a doctor today, I would probably be tempted to pick up like now everyone's talking about the new drug Ozempic. That's where a lot of doctors are talking about. And I'm thinking they're probably food addicts, because it makes you not want to eat. But anyway, didn't have that option then. And I stumbled across some addiction literature, because I was moving in from family practice into addiction. And I came across, nobody was talking about it, remember, but I came across a early research article. It was in I think it was 1998 or something like that, about, many of you may have heard of it, where rats will choose sugar over cocaine, or saccharin over cocaine. So when that research came out, I was one of the first people to stumble upon that. And I thought, oh my God, this is an addiction. This isn't a bulimic behavior. This isn't bad willpower. This is an addiction. And then it took me another 5 years, 10 years to actually convince myself that I had to treat it like an addiction, even though I intellectually knew, like a lot of people now know, the food industry is making foods addictive, but they can't stop nevertheless, because they don't really believe that they are an addict. So it took me quite a long time to really buy it. And once I saw it, it's like you put the glasses on, and then you can't not see it anymore. I was doing the same kind of stuff that the alcoholic or the cocaine addict did. I would lie to myself and others about how much I ate. They would say, "What's your problem?" And I would say, "Yeah, I'm eating normally." Not telling them that late at night, I'm not eating normally, I'm binging, and I'm not even telling them, I'm not even telling myself the truth. I would hide food when somebody came over. I didn't want people to know what I had, because then they'd want it, and I wanted it for later. I would even take food from plates, and I didn't even know who the people were that ate that. But if it was there and I wanted it, I would take it. Like I would behave like an addict would. Like I said, lie to myself. I'd eat way more. I'd keep trying to stop, and I couldn't. And then whenever I did say, Vera, I was actually 100 pounds more than I am now. I finally said, you have to stop. And then it would always be the bottom line. How will I stop? Because it's fine to say stop, but it's just like the alcoholic. You take that bottle of wine from them late at night, which is what I used to do to get to sleep. How will I sleep? Well, now I didn't have the bottle of wine. I'd have the tub of Haagen-Dazs and the jujubes and the big plate of cheesies. Take that away from me, and how am I going to sleep? Which was it was a super challenge, and there was nothing to help at that time, except there were a few OA programs, which is like AA but for food, Overeaters Anonymous. Not really, it didn't really speak to me at that time. But eventually, I started to get. This was now in the. I would say that I'm now food sober. I haven't had sugar for I think 16 years now, so it's been quite a while. So around that time, I started to find people, because now food addiction was starting to get on the map here and there, not in a big way, but more and more. And I happened to connect up with them. And ever since then, I've gotten my own sobriety intact. So now I don't eat any sugar, I don't eat any flour. And as I've gotten older, I've realized I can't eat grains either, which means bread and well, that's flour, but rice and quinoa and stuff like that. It's too obsessed, makes me too obsessed. So anyway, that's kept me food sober. And also now I work in the field, and I'm one of the things I do is I have a Facebook group page, and I have a podcast like you have, to bring the information out to people so that more and more people know that doctors, the medical profession, is still not recognizing that this is a condition. But I know it is personally, and I see them because I'm a person that's in the field. People come to me and I see it. It's like there's no question in my mind that there is a fairly high proportion of the population, we're thinking 15-20%, that struggles with food. And it might be because of a previous addiction like I had, or family history, or just because we're eating the stuff so much. It's like anybody who smokes cigarettes will eventually become a smoker. Anybody who drinks a little bit eventually becomes a drinker. It's just a matter of time. And in our society where kids are eating this stuff right from the get-go, there's probably way more food addicts than we even are counting. And I'm sure of people listening here that there's going to be somebody who's going, yes, that could be me. Which is why I'm so happy, Doug, that you're asking me to speak, because I want this to be out to validate that it's a condition, and actually there is help now. And the more people come, the more help there will be, and then eventually it'll be an acknowledged condition in the medical world. There, that's my story.
Oh, wow. That was great, Vera. You touched on so many points that I was like, it was like light bulbs were going off in my head as you were talking. One thing, when you quit alcohol, the first experience I had, my first meeting, that I walked into, they had bowls of like jujubes and like licorice and all this stuff on the table, and I'm sitting there thinking to myself, why is all this like stuff out? I kind of didn't understand. It wasn't until probably a few months after I quit drinking where all of a sudden I started craving sugar.
Yeah.
I don't know what it was, but I was like, I all of a sudden like started to get addicted to sugar. And,
Yes.
I would have a cup of coffee in the morning and I would put like 4 or 5 things of sugar in my coffee. I'd be going to the store and I'd be buying like a bag of Skittles, or I'd be like buying something to fix that craving, the same as an alcoholic would, right?
Yeah.
So do you find that with the food stuff, like when you were in the throes of your food addiction, when you started to correct that, was there anything else in your life that you kind of like, I wouldn't say like got addicted to, but like you started to like maybe crave more or do more, and then you would sit in your head and go like, oh wait, I'm acting alcoholically, or I'm acting too much addiction wise with that. Was there anything like that?
Well, what we're talking about is transfer addiction, right? Like it just goes from one to the other. And if I don't, or if the person doesn't deal with the actual addictive dynamic, it's just going to go all over the place. So initially it was alcohol that then stopped and went to sugar. And the sugar one, it was just so startling. Like I just couldn't believe that would happen. Because like I said, a lot of people now tell me, well, they had this as a child, but that wasn't my story. It was like, why is this happening so much? And so when I stopped, we talk about in the addiction community, we're like the hole in the empty hole in the donut or something, like, or we're irritable, restless, and discontent. Like if I don't have this thing, how will I sleep at night? Yes, I would be looking for something else. And for me, it's like pacing. I won't be able to sleep. It's a kind of ferocity. On some level, I would like to say I cured that because the program, like the 12-step program, which I belong to, I'm not supposed to say that, but anyway, I'm going to. But it doesn't have to be that. It can be some kind of a therapy program of some sort, helps you deal with that. Because what it means is that whoever the addict is, in my case, me, I haven't learned how to self-soothe in a way that doesn't require putting something into my mouth or into my body. I have to learn how to do that properly. I'd like to say that I've done that through program, through education, and I would say that to a large degree I have. But I'm a very intense person, and where I put a lot of my frenetic energy, which used to be addictive energy, is in work. So you could say workaholism. I don't want to do food because I know that what's going to happen there. Sometimes I'll let go a little bit and eat sweetener food, and then I find I'm eating that too much, so I've got to cut that off. So I there was a time when I used to travel a lot, and so that was a way to feed that sort of freneticness. And there was listen, travel. I don't travel anymore. I don't want since COVID. I've gotten lazy, and I don't want to squish myself into one of those airplane seats. They're just so uncomfortable. The planes are getting smaller and smaller anyway, or the seats are. So shopping, but I'm at an age now where I have everything, and I don't want more stuff. So I'm kind of left with what do I do with myself, even to this day, 15 years later, not drinking, not eating sugar, not food. But it's better, and truthfully, so that a person like myself doesn't transfer, it's a constant working on myself through program activity. And for me, I don't mean working on myself. It's one of the tools that we use is you work for a greater purpose. So like you working for the greater purpose of dispelling information about alcoholism or addiction. Me, it's about food addiction. Like I think that somebody who has an addictive tendency has to find their passion. Otherwise, their passion will be their booze, their food.
Yeah, absolutely. I didn't have this question written down. I have other questions written down, but my producer just gave me an amazing question to ask you that I never even thought of. In your opinion, would you say that food addiction affects more women or more men, or is it kind of like equal?
That is a really good question. And I would say that societally or culturally, it was always men would drink the beer and the booze and women would make the cakes and there'd be all the bake-a-thons and all that kind of stuff. That was definitely a historical thing. And it makes so much sense because until the liquor industry about maybe 15 years ago cottoned on that they actually said this. They said, quote, "We're not serving the female population well enough." And so then they started making all those mommy drinks and sweet drinks, and you can get martinis that are all sorts of flavors. It's not just that bitter vermouth and whatever it is. It's sweet stuff now. And so that was an attempt to bring in the female population. And so since then, it's kind of normalized because I don't think it actually makes genetically a difference whether females prefer food over men preferring booze. I think that's really just a societal thing, which is now kind of melding. But absolutely, that was the case before. And that's why I would always say when, the husband is, sent off to treatment and the wife is saying, you shouldn't do that. The husband should say, well, you shouldn't be eating all that stuff that you're eating because it's the same thing. Whether you go to the liquor store and you're wondering what you should buy, what's the best thing for today versus the person that's opening the fridge going, geez, what am I going to have tonight? We're not talking about what dinner we're going to have, but what kind of feast we're going to have. Yeah. So It's basically, really, it is ultimately the same. And it's melding now so that we're seeing a lot more men. Although, it's actually, even today, if we look at treatment, we see more women going to AA programs and stuff, but still it's predominantly men. And definitely in the food addiction world, it's a lot more women seeking help than men. We got to get the men to come and ask for help.
Well, you already have my head spinning. I'm already ready to jump on board on this thing. Like when I quit drinking, my weight increased. I thought my weight would decrease, but my weight increased, and I think it increased because I was eating all of these like sweets, and like I was eating more throughout the day probably than I was like at actual meal times. So like my wife actually made a comment to me a few weeks ago, and she mentioned to somebody, and she said, Doug kind of always has to have like a candy or something in his mouth.
Yeah, that was me too. I get it. I totally understand that. Or you don't want to go anywhere without having a stash of it in your bag somewhere.
Yeah, like I can't go on it. Like I can. I shouldn't say I can't. But whenever we travel or go somewhere, Vera, like you're reading my mind here. Like I pack like stuff in my pocket, and I always have something within reach. And there's the part, for people at home, if you're listening to this, there's the part where the addict still exists, where
Yeah.
like, I've put down the booze and the drugs, but I'm now picking up candy, or I'm picking up, more food and stuff like that. You talked about companies making food like addictive,
Yeah.
like, and the sense of like, and I see that too. I see where you're coming from with that. A lot, when it comes to the food being addictive, would you say that they're geared towards a younger audience, or would it be like a say, like an older audience, like in
Well,
the sense of like,
yeah. That's a great question. So I would say they're geared to a younger audience for sure, because they know that if they get you, then they've got you for life. Like that's
mm,
just the way it is. And so the food industry will deliberately have campaigns to get people on board. So you have some sort of allegiance. Like in my day, it was you were either a Pepsi person or a Coca-Cola person. You were
right.
either just like were you an Export A or a Demorier or a whatever smoker? Because I used to be a smoker too. And yeah, so they try to hook you in that way, and then you've got all these sort of campaigns like the Happy Meal and Tony the Tiger and Pillsbury Doughboy and all that kind of stuff to kind of get people hooked on that way. So children for sure, and that sort of need for us all to belong to something or identify with something is they're very smart. In fact, there's more research done in food addiction in the food industry than there is in the academic community and in the eating disorder community, because they're not acknowledging this condition. The pharmaceutical industry, they don't want this either, because they're actually very happy that we eat this stuff, because then we're going to go and get that Ozempic or get some kind of a pill to try to lose that weight. And so that we're doing the whole yo-yo back and forth. And the food industry is complicit with that, because they're happy. They're good. I mean, I don't know if you know this, but the food industry is also the same people who do the diet industry and the exercise industry. It's all the same people. So it's a win-win for them, and it's a lose-lose for us. So yes, they go for the kids, but they go for everybody, but they know how to market. So they're going to, for somebody in my age group, it's going to be the people who want to join the baking club or whatever. For the younger, more hip, trendy people, I like to think that I'm still hip and trendy, but not as much as the young folk. They're going to the dessert bars and stuff like that. And so you're going to get the fancy stuff there, which won't appeal to me anymore, because I just want to eat it in front of Netflix at night, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it's a big business, so they're going to target at all age groups.
Right.
And they get the guys, by the way, let me just say, they get the guys not by all the sweet candy stuff. It's the burgers and the ribs and all that kind of stuff. And it's not the meat, because the meat is okay. It's all the stuff they put on top of it,
Yeah. The additives.
That makes it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. You made a comment earlier about that they didn't have OA, when you were starting out and doing all this stuff, and like you started a meeting. Share a little bit about like that, like when you first started like your overeaters stuff.
Yeah.
Were you attracting a lot of people right off the get-go, like when you were announcing stuff, or was it a process?
Well, okay, so I did know about OA, and OA's been around since the 1960s, and it actually had a fairly large, like 95% women population, but it didn't speak to me, because they were kind of what we in the food addiction world, we see them as kind of they want to appeal to a lot of people, so they're not that tight, they're not that rigid. Although now there are some more programs, certainly in 12-step, that are more rigid, including some OA branches. But what I did, I work at Renaissance, and at Renaissance we actually had a food addiction program, and it wasn't until that program started that people started to know about me. I mean, I was talking till I was blue in the face until when I got my own recovery, which was 15 years ago. But it was probably, it was like sort of pre-COVID. So I guess 6 or 7 years ago that we got a food addiction program, thanks to a donor who heard me speaking actually on a CBC thing once. And she funded 3 years of a food addiction program at Renaissance. It's no longer in existence because COVID killed a lot of things, including that. But that 3 years drew so many people that were saying, yeah, this exists, and I need to be locked up for a month with no sugar because I'm going to go crazy. But we locked people up for a month because it's a residential treatment center, and we would look at their purses when they came in. If they saw those little candy wrappers that you would be out the door. So you wouldn't have the candy wrapper, you wouldn't have the candy. Right. And by the time the person left, a month later, they were off the sugar. I got to tell you, folks who are listening, if you think you want to quit, it only takes 3 or 4 weeks to quit. If we could lock people up, that would be great. But anyway, that program is over. And now what we're doing is trying to get as much outpatient support to help people get through that 3 to 4 weeks. That's the number one thing. And then the number two, to not relapse back. Because people don't take it seriously. They think, I quit, I'll quit again. But you can't. It's just like alcohol. The alcoholic, once they quit, they don't want to pick up again because they're going to be back again.
Yeah. And would you say quitting, to me, I think I quit drugs, I quit booze. But when you say quit food, that's a lot different, right? Because you need food to survive. So
Yeah, you do. But you don't need processed food. You don't need the jujubes. You don't need the chips. Yeah. Popcorn. What you do need is real food. This is where we say it's actually not a diet where you're reducing. You can be as full as ever, but what you're eating is vegetables and yogurt and nuts and meats and fish. You're just not eating processed junk food. Basically, It's a non-junk food diet. And that is hard at first because that's where the high is. That's where the buzz is. I don't get that much of a buzz if I eat a nice piece of steak, but I do get full. But now I don't need that buzz anymore from the food. I mean, admittedly, I still want the buzz in life, but it's not from the food anymore.
Well, Vera, this has been eye-opening. It's been amazing. I can't thank you enough for being here. Like I said, I was talking to a lady the other day, and I said I was interviewing you, and she knew exactly who you were. And she was like, I follow her on social media, and I do this and I do that. And she was just so super psyched that I was interviewing you. So really quickly. Yeah. So really quickly, what are you doing right now, and how can people get a hold of you?
Okay,
really quick.
Yeah. So really quick, please, if anybody's interested, my book, Food Junkies, Recovery from Food Addiction, it's on Amazon, it's in libraries. Please check that out. I have a YouTube channel, Vera Tarman ND. You can find out my stuff there. And I have a Facebook group. Please join it. It's free. I'm Sweet Enough, Sugar-Free for Life.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Vera. Thanks again for being here. Thanks, everybody, for watching Canadian Sober. I'm so glad you're all here. This was a fantastic episode, and we're going to get her back sometime in the future. I can guarantee that. Thanks again, Vera, for joining us. See everybody, Canadian Sober.